Okay. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the heavy lifting items. I think I've covered this a little bit already, but I want to just really focus on this topic. So when you are done with the agreement, like I said, you'll have cleared out a huge chunk of your issues. What will remain is the big things. And I would really, suggest, because it can be tricky, working with some people, working with me or working with other people to get it ironed out. And the reason is this. It would be worth it to make one appointment and get rid of most, if not all, of whatever you have left. Or at the minimum, you can, by going through the process, you learn how to do it yourself. Because it really is fairly simple. But it helps to see it, and it helps to kind of get into the concept of how you think. And once you've gone through that process, one time at least, you will find that you've kind of learned the method. And so it's worth it. Also, it's surprising, it's almost hard for people to believe how quickly it can be moved and changed. That is the case. These things are, once you've figured out how to identify them and learn how to think, because a lot of it's in how to think. And while I'm going to try and share part of that with you here, it can really make a big difference to go through that process. Like I said, there's a lot of people that do this type of work, and what you're looking for is trauma clearing. So people that do work with trauma clearing, and you want to make sure that whoever you're looking to work with is familiar with trauma clearing in a heart center type situation, or in some form, like Brent Phillips does something a little different. But I don't want to get into his technique. But he's a different technique, but it's really, it takes a real computerized look at it, in a sense. He's from MIT, which is great. And so he's, he has a different technique. But what you're looking for is people that are specifically working on the stuff that's trauma, because what's going to be left for you is going to be stuff that's fairly traumatic, and things that are life lesson stuff. And these are things that you may need to actually really look at consciously, because they may really require you to make life change, or they may be key to you taking a new direction in life. So these are big things, and it's really important. And they're important for you to see them and experience that, to have them go away. And when I say see, experience, and I'm not a huge fan of people reliving the event. I know that that seems to be therapy's favorite thing to do, where they put you in a situation where you have to go back into that time and re-experience it, and I'm not a big fan of that. Only for the sake of, I just don't think it's necessary, and I think it just causes the trauma all over again, from my personal opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of people who disagree with me, and that's fine. But the concept is that what we're trying to do is obtain awareness of what it is that's really causing this repeating pattern in your life, or this remaining pain that's in your life. So if you're trying to find somebody that does this work, it should probably be somebody that's doing some form of muscle testing, and that's focused on clearing trauma, and has an actual solution for it. Isn't just going to tell you what it is, but not just muscle testing, because muscle testing doesn't actually do the clearing of it, removal of it. So really, these folks should be doing something related to moving it through with energy, or moving it through with your awareness and your intention, or through your heart, through heart coherence. But really, this is the kind of people, that kind of type of things that should be in the process for you. Now, therapies work too a lot better after you've done this agreement, because you don't have all these things that are holding you back anymore, keeping you from being able to move forward. Because what will happen is there's so many things that are tripping you up. It makes it really hard for you to identify what the problem really is, which is why I think a lot of therapies feel like they're circular. It's like, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that. Well, maybe it's this. It's when you take all that little junk out, it's really pretty clear what it is. If it's not, then with the right person, it will be. A lot of therapies, and the people that have been doing the therapy along with us are moving things out a lot faster because all this junk is gone, and it just leaves them looking the remaining problem straight in the face. Like one person, it could be just feeling like everyone abandons them. It's like, everybody abandons me. And they'll hear themselves saying the same thing over and over again because the other 400 things they say during their day aren't there anymore. So it's them repeating the same thing over and over, and they're like, well, I guess this is my problem, because that's all that's left, it's just a handful of things. And becomes really, as long as they're being told, and I'm telling you right now, be more self-aware. Listen to what you're saying to yourself. The chatter that's been coming in from these external systems, and there are chatters, AI chatter programs, especially running in the States, that stuff really should all be turned off. So really all that's going to be left is just you, okay? Which is good, because now you're not chasing ghosts anymore. There's no more shadow boxing, I used to call it. And really what's left will just be what you got going, and you just need to address those things. And similar to the narcissist, right? We're looking in the mirror. What is it that I'm seeing? What is it that's making me mad? It's really important to identify that what you're seeing in people that's making you react, narcissist or no narcissist, if something's triggering you, it's probably something that's in your field, in some agreement that you're still holding, and you want to write it down. And then after you're done making that remaining list of what's left, you're going to try and see the pattern in it. What's the theme here? So you're looking for the theme of what's left in your list of things that still has you kind of reeling or upset, and find that theme. So there's usually a common denominator. Every single time I've done this, there's a common denominator. So make sure that you're finding the right people to work with, and you need to keep a log. I can't emphasize it enough. It's one of the most powerful tools you're going to have available to you, because by the time you get to sitting down with somebody, you're going to forget a lot of it. And that's going to really set back your progress, because you're going to be focused on whatever the last thing was that happened. And that takes away a lot of our power to be able to see the connections of what's really going on. So just keeping even if it's just a piece of paper and a pen next to your bed or whatever, but that's going to be one of your most powerful tools after you do this, because after you do this, you're going to have the most powerful capacity to change things and to actually affect real change of whatever is left, whatever is remaining. It's about being aware of how you're behaving and what's making you activate emotionally, what still holds charge for you, and what's still triggering you. So write it down, and then at the end of the day, look at it and say to yourself, or at the end of the week, look at it and say to yourself, what's the common denominator, what's the theme? Okay? Once you figure out what the theme is of the stuff that's making you mad, the next logical step is going to be find the root. So, right, it's just like math, right? You gotta go to the very lowest level. So we're gonna go down and get to the first time this showed up for you, with or without muscle testing. With muscle testing, you can do the method of the trauma related to people yelling at me first originated in my life between the ages of 0 and 5. And then if that's no, then you'd say 5 and 10. If you start getting weird responses, then you need to state the whole thing again, just so you know. So you're going to get it, so let's say it's between 5 and 10, and then you would say, okay, and then you can narrow it down. So you say it's happened at 5, happened at 6, happened at 7, happened, so you get to, let's say it lands on 8. And then you say, okay, well, I can't think of anything that happened to me at 8. Okay, so what do I do? Well, Okay, it was related to my mom. Okay, so this trauma, this trauma related to people yelling at me, was related to my mom. No. It's related to my dad. No. It's related to my brother. Yes. Okay, well, what happened at 8 when my brother's yelling at me? Okay, let's say, if you can figure it out, great. If you can't figure it out, try clearing the trauma related to your brother on the issue that happened when you were 8. I mean it. You can do it this way. I've seen it done this way, where the person isn't totally sure what exactly happened when they were 8. They just know that something happened with their brother when they were 8. And so he was yelling at them. Now, this is really unlikely, because what I've seen happen is when people narrow it down to that particular bracket of time, it almost always triggers them to remember. Okay, that happens a lot. Most of the time people will start out with no clue. And the minute they start to narrow it down to the time bracket and they start to identify who it was that triggered, because most of this stuff ends up being something that happened from relationships. In some cases it's accidents and incidents, but a lot of it's relationships. So, and then, and even if they can get close, so let's say they say, well, there was these 5 things. Okay, so let's say there were 5 times that they can think of that their brother was yelling at them, and they're not sure which one it is. Then they can test, well, it was this incident, this related, so that they'll word it something like, this trauma from being yelled at related to my brother yelling at me when we were on the train, when we were in the car, when I was going to school, and you'll figure out which one it is. If it's none of those things, right, and you're back to square one, you can still try clearing broadly. So you would just try and you would put statements in for, I'm holding trauma from my brother yelling at me when I was 8. And then you put in statements of, my brother and I always get along. I forgive my brother for these are statements that you'd put in. It's, like, I forgive my brother for yelling at me when I was 8. I am grateful for my brother, teaching me how to be strong. So you can do things like this. It's like, really think about it. Be thoughtful and be very intentional in what it is that you want to do. And then you're working with your God points, that infinite point in you that has all this power to make and affect these changes. Sometimes if you can get close enough, that will help you make the shift. Okay? So I just kind of want to walk you through a little bit of what it looks like to try and get rid of these things. And a lot of it's going to be intuitive, where you're just kind of feeling into it. So allow yourself to feel into it. Some people have things pop into their head suddenly. That happens all the time, by the way. It happens all the time. Once they've identified what something is, they can come up with 30 or 40 things sometimes. And then the question to them is, what was the first time this showed up? And, sure enough, I think when I was working with one person, the person I was talking about earlier, where this boy had attacked her when she was 5, and it was kindergarten, kid locked her in a room, and shut the door and was chasing her around and scared her. But this led to a life of torture from every man met, and it was in the field, and that's how this looks. I'm sharing, and I've asked if I could share this story, and I was given permission, so I'm sharing it with you because I was given permission. So yeah, basically, that's how it can show up. And when I mean attacked, it's like every time this person ended up alone with somebody, they would get attacked. And it's like not even then, and then it became men attack me. So it went from men attack me when I'm alone to men attack me, and then men attack me, and then every man's attacking, It's like, and ultimately, here's how this plays out. This person doesn't like to leave the house because they're so scared. But they don't know why they're scared. They have no idea. They just know that they just basically live a life in lockdown. Who wants to live like that because of one incident from kindergarten? So that's how messed up your brains are, okay? They're a mess. These affiliations are terrible. And once it's in your field, it's going to keep showing up. And part of the reason it keeps showing up because it's like, address me, address me, address me, address me. You need to address me. You need to address me. And it keeps getting worse for people too. So trauma things where we keep ignoring them and we don't want to address them. We think it's somehow better that we should, and we're trained, right? Just, bury it. Don't address your emotions. Just, bury them and pretend everything's fine because everybody wants everybody to be fine all the time. Well, that's nonsense. The only way you get fine is by actually addressing the issue. Okay? So, but the only way you can address the issue is when you actually find the real issue. So now you know. So, really, it's not that... It's easy for someone like me because I've done it so much. Obviously I started with me, and I get to work with people, and it's surprisingly easy, especially with muscle testing. And eventually, the more you do it, the more intuitive you get. And there's a point where you almost don't even need to muscle test anymore because you can feel. But don't let that stop you. Okay, so I want to tell you something about that. Muscle testing. So many times I've had people, really, they swear up and down, I do not have this. I do not have this. I can feel I don't have it. And they muscle test are like, there's no way. How do I have it? It says yes. I would have lost a bet on my whole house for that. You will be shocked at how much is in there that you really couldn't have begun to. I mean, I think I held a belief when I was doing some of that. When I was first starting out with Brent's stuff, he did a whole expose on spiritual beliefs, and it was great. And one of the ones that I had was I have to have a priest to be close to God. Weird, right? I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not how I roll. I felt like I was always connected. I didn't know how to define it. I think I just went into I feel connected to that spiritual component in me. I called God. I think it was maybe other people define it differently, but for me it was just it was always in me. I never felt like it was outside of me. I had real problems with thinking it was outside of me. But anyway, I held this belief. Wow. No clue. Yeah, so if you can muscle test, do it. And even if you think you don't need to, you're like, I don't have that. Do it. Because you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. I've had these debates with people before where they're like, I don't need a test, and it's like, you really should muscle test this. And they would have lost a bet. Yeah. It's like once it's there, it's like, wow. And then you can get rid of it. You can change your agreement. Change the agreements that you have. So, I guess I just want to kind of cover some of this and explain what it looks like to kind of ferret out these remaining issues. It may take you a lot longer. I guess that's what I'm going to say is you may want to weigh this out. It might be easier just to make an appointment with me or with someone that's doing this type of work, just because I feel like we can get to the bottom of it so quickly. I do want people to move out of it quickly, and I will tell you why. As long as you have these susceptibilities, because there's this element of something much larger in play, I really don't like the idea of people having exposure, or having weaknesses for very long, just because you are basically taking yourself off this network. So any exposure you have, it's just one more thing to be messed with. So I don't know. For me, it'd be easier just to work through it with somebody and have them, running nice and smooth pretty rapidly, or at least teach them how to do it. Each person thinks differently, and so you can kind of get into how they think too. And then that way, it's almost like it's more tailored for how their mind works, how they think. It's a little bit, it can be helpful, but there's people that just can't do that or can't afford that, and that's why I want to make sure that I'm explaining to you kind of how that process looks. And even though you may stumble through it a little bit, trying to do it yourself, I want you to know how it works and how it looks, so that you can try, because it's important. So, and please know, because of what had occurred, the story that I told earlier about my friend and how, system-wise, she had so many people kind of come at her because she was doing this work. We put a ton of language in the agreement for turning, making it so alarms aren't really set off for people that are doing this work. So when you basically disconnect, it's kind of in a silent disconnect. So it shouldn't put you into some kind of a category to be targeted for it. So I put a lot of protections in for people. I really want to make sure that people that are doing this work, not only do they have all the programs to get them off this stuff, but they have programs in there to keep them protected from even being identified for getting off of this stuff, and then they can just really focus on just their self-love, getting their power back, and being safe, and becoming completely whole. In doing that, they're helping everyone else to do the same. And the grids, I have video upon video about the grid on my website. But bottom line, it's really just about everybody having a safe place to work and sharing in that work. And so, because there's so many modalities, and one of the things I've seen, in fact, I'm going to say Andrew Bartzis, and I think Till Swan, I listened to a video that they did where they were saying it was, I don't want to misquote them, but my takeaway was that they were, kind of disheartened by the fact that the various people doing the modalities, in some cases they were more interested in being right. In other cases it's kind of like, mine's the best way. Well, mine's the best way. And I'm just going to tell you, whatever works for you is my way. It's the whole point of Frogbox. It's like, whatever works for you is my way. I just want people to get better and feel better. I support it. Whatever it is. If it's working, great. But the whole point of the grid really is so that it doesn't matter what modality you're using. And that's the powerful thing, is that it's sharing it back into a different community off of this matrix grid that's poisonous. Because not everybody can move out in the middle of woods. And even these days, it wouldn't even probably do any good. Even if you could go off-grid, like realistically, actually off-grid, I'm not sure how much good it would do you. Because it's networked at satellite level, so what are you going to do? It's everywhere. Anyway, no fear. It's just a matter of understanding that you have all the power. You have all the say, and you just take it back. And this is how we do it. This is how we ferret out the remaining issues. And eventually, once you get to this place, kind of where I'm at, I think everybody's still got stuff going on, and I've still got probably stuff to work on. New stuff coming in. It's awesome. But I know how to get rid of it. And parents, while I can't tell you to do this with your kids, I want to share with you that my kids have been doing this work. They know how to muscle test. They know how to, they do a standing test, which Brent covers really well, I think, where you're standing up and your feet are shoulder width apart, and you just kind of let yourself, sway, and then you say yes, and you see which way you sway to, and then, most of the time it's forward, and if you say no, and then you kind of sway backward. You're standing when you're doing this, and your feet are shoulder width apart, and you're just kind of standing, just kind of loose, and then you stand. So anyway, when you're doing that, basically, that's how the kids like to do that. My son's gotten good with the finger test that I was showing earlier, and they do that. I've caught them doing this. They didn't want me to know. I've caught them doing this on all kinds of things. Like, you probably should test for that. They'll do it. No, you should clear that. So they'll make new statements and rerun the agreements. It's really adorable. My kids are so balanced, and I love that they have a tool to keep them from keeping trauma over a lifetime, like the rest of us unfortunately had to do. So I can't imagine what life would look like if we could have done that as kids. So it's so encouraging to me that they have a safe way to handle emotions, and they can still talk about it. We're open, talking about emotion, but they don't have to relive the whole painful event either. They can just literally change the agreement, and so it doesn't happen again. One example of this, my daughter, There's another one that says, like, people, you know, I was talking about people and how people can trigger us, but my daughter, she kept hitting her head, right? She's 4. So it's not like we're going to have a struggle here trying to have her muscle test. You know, 4 is a little bit too much, you know, but she's able to do the hand sequence, so it's like, let's try saying, you know, I'm safe all the time, my head is always safe, you know. We just made a bunch of different statements for her, and she has, you know, she did the clearing, and so we'll see if she stops hitting her head, you know, because usually behaviors like that have something to do with something too. So if you have something like that happening, heck, I burned myself. You know what? I'll show you this if you can see it. I burned myself, and it had to do with being angry at the place that I was at. It has to do with my ex, because he'd met his girlfriend there, and I was angry at the Chevron. And I went in, I was kind of in a hurry, and I intuitively I knew that the cup was, the lid wasn't going to stay on, and I thought I should put this down. And I didn't listen to it. I was being stubborn, and I poured coffee all over myself. And so I was like, I needed to check this, and so I was trying to find out if it was an external thing, you know, something that came at me externally, and you can ask that question too, by the way. So I did a muscle test for, you know, this burn came, you know, was resulted from something external, or it came from me internally, and the answer was yes, it was internal, and it was rage. And it's funny too, because if you look up Louise Hay, burns usually about anger. So, which after doing all this work, I knew pretty much by heart. So that it was related to being angry, and here I am at the Chevron as angry. So it made sense. Yep. So I cleared that remaining anger that I had towards the Chevron people, because they had nothing to do with it, but my mind is associated for me so kindly. So, you know, incidents like that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, with my daughter hitting her head over and over again. She hit her head once after that same day. This was actually today. She hit her head once in the morning, and then she hit her head 4 more times. And you know, it's similar to that, where it happened once, now it's in her field. Now she keeps doing it. So that's the kind of thing where it's like, if you keep having something happen to you, even if you can't get to the emotional reason for it, at least, at the very least, clear for these things keep happening to me. You know, I keep hitting my head. Delete. You know, my head is always safe. Except, you know, even if that's as good as you can get, fine. Go with it. See what happens. See if it changes anything. You know, or I'm removing any and all trauma related to my head being hit. Any associations with my head being hit. You know, you can try for this. You know, you should be able to, just in looking at the way I phrase the agreements, you should be able to get a real good understanding of kind of how I'm wording things. And I'll get into wording in a minute. But yeah, so you should be able to, you know, get a feel for it. Now, I put in some really heavy language. It gets really long and lengthy under most of the sections on the technologies and stuff like that. I try to paint a really broad brush. So I guess when it comes to the muscle testing and stuff, you can also muscle test for the item number. So you can say, I'm muscle testing for this number, because all of them have an item number, and they're all unique on the statements list. And it should work just the same, because your eyes can see the statement, but you have to make the statement for it. And part of this, actually, I had done a lot of research on remote viewing, and they will use numbers to associate to locations. And that's one of the things they would do, is they would give a number, and the brain would so, how can I explain this? They didn't want people to know anything about it when they sat down to remote view it. This is the government, by the way, that did the remote viewing. Imagine that. And the guy who was teaching the class later is one of the people that had done the training for this remote viewing for the government. And so how they did it is they would tell nobody anything about it. So they would give the person an envelope that had all the information that they needed, maps, coordinates, whatever, and just a number. And then the people that were asked to remote view would be given that number, just the number. And then they would remote view it. And that's how they would get all this details about locations and places and things that were going on at those locations. And that's how the remote viewers would have very similar information about those locations. So you just used a number, and yes, it can be done that way. Your brain is already, in this case, you've even seen the words, so you can test for the number. Because the wording is so long, I certainly don't expect people to read the entire verbiage. But I try to word it very carefully so it wouldn't be confusing. So yeah, you can just test for the numbers. It's certainly faster than reading every single statement, and it will work the same. So that was the concept behind that. So I think I'm going to stop on that note. I hope that all these videos are going to be useful for people. I did want to explain to people how to work through your questions, and deviated slightly, but that's alright. Okay, take care.